think he's having fun with us. I would be surprised if he doesn't re-sign with the Clippers. They spent a first-round draft pick to go get him. He was really important for them. I think they want to re-sign him. The only question is how much. And for him, if you look back at his history, last year he was in this position. He signed something with the Spurs, then that didn't work out, went to the Knicks, ended up going to the Clippers in a trade. I think he's actually going to come out ahead here if he ends up re-signing there for, 12 to 13 million a year for a couple of years. But
the interesting thing about the Clippers is that they have two free agent centers, Marcus Morris and Montrezl Harrell. Mm-hmm. Do they bring them both back? Now, Steve Ballmer is the richest sports owner in America. They certainly can afford to pay it. But do they bring them both back? Do they look maybe to sign and trade one of them? And that's a big factor as you look at their roster construction because they don't have a lot to trade. If they wanted to go out and get a player that makes any sort of significant money, they don't have a lot to trade. So the question would be, could they work with one of these guys on a sign and trade if they wanted to change their roster? But I got to tell you, it's not just about money for Marcus Morris. The role that they put him in after the trade last year, it wasn't perfect, and they didn't get the best out of him. So when they come to him and make an offer, it's going to have to be more than just about money.
Yeah, I hope the Clippers do sign him. You need guys like this when you're trying to win a championship. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around the block a few times. He understands his role. Yes, he could have had an increased role. He really didn't get familiar with what they were trying to do to develop some consistency over there, but that'll come in due time. And you don't find that by going from team to team each and every year, especially when you're trying to win a championship. So I hope that the Clippers do what they need to do to keep him because he could be a key component, like his brother was in a championship run for the Clippers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. The same thing. I think he was a part of that team falling short and going through the summer like, I can't wait for next year. So I think bringing him back is motivation for their unit as a whole, and he will continue to be a great asset as he gets comfortable and implemented a little more into their offense.
Also, we know how close the Morris brothers are, right?
Yes, I was
he
just
knows
about to say that.
what went wrong in the Clippers locker room versus what went right in the Lakers locker room, and I think that has to move around in his head a little bit as he makes this decision. But at this point, I think if the Clippers can offer him more than any other team and they'd step up, I think they do that because the one thing that the Clippers really needed when they did their autopsy of the season and what went wrong was leadership and toughness. And that's what Marcus Morris brings them. And I just don't think he had that the whole locker room for as long a year as he needed to because he came over in the trade deadline.
Right. I was going to say, when you're new to a team, it's hard to be one of the key voices and saying to the other guys and calling guys out and telling them to toughen up and all of that stuff. Brian has had his head down.
Yeah, you do.
Looking at his phone and texting for the last, 5 minutes there? Is there anything you can tell us, or do we have to wait till after the commercial, Brian?
Let's give it a minute. You may be using that alert. We'll see. This is everything, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're in a place like Oklahoma City, you're probably not going to get free agents. The only way you're going to get players is through the draft and through trades. So this is what these draft picks are, the chance to draft those players or trade them for players. And Zach was just talking about the Thunder getting second-round picks in the next few days. Watch him get another first-round pick, especially if they can participate in a sign-and-trade for Danilo Gallinari. He's not going to be back in Oklahoma City, but they could send him elsewhere. This is team building 101, but it's almost like team building 101.2 or something because he's doing this to such an extent.
I mean, even down to the level that the year or so that you're going to probably suck, which is next year, they're not even going to have fans. I mean, that's beautiful. This is basically what Sam Hinkie was trying to do in Philadelphia, which is get as many draft picks as you possibly can, give yourself as many chances to hit on those draft picks, whether they be in the teens or at the top of the draft. Well, next year, the Thunder are probably not going to be as good, probably a couple of years here, but at some point, you become a good, nice young destination with good young players that people might want to go to, and then you have all the first-round picks. I feel like Adam Silver is going to be announcing, and with the 10th pick, yes, you guessed it, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Sam Presti.
That's going to happen every year for the next few years.
Well, Ramona, I like the point you made about the process. I think it's something that we don't quite hit on enough when we talk about Philadelphia, that Sam Hinkie's original vision included the fact that when you are drafting 18 and 19-year-old kids, you are just not going to know for sure what they are going to turn into in 3 or 4 years. So the idea isn't just get picks near the top of the draft or in the first round. The idea was get as many as you can. So that even if you only bat, in baseball terms, 300 or 400, if you have so many shots being at the plate, so many ups, you are going to get, say, in Philadelphia, end up with a Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, 2 young all-stars locked in on those contracts. And look, Philadelphia, they whiffed on a bunch of those early picks. But again, when you have as many picks as Philly amassed during that process, and as much as Sam Hinkie has amassed here, you have the chance of getting those young players that you really, really want and can hit on. Paul, if you were on that team over the next few years, how would you approach it in terms of proving yourself to the Oklahoma City Brass? Because remember, they're going to have new players coming in with all these draft picks every year, and also to make your name for yourself, maybe to shop yourself to other teams around the league.
Well, I think there's tremendous opportunity there, especially for a kid like Shea Gilchrist. You know, he's a young star. He has this opportunity with a Chris Paul gone. And the guys there, they notice. They understand their situation. There's going to be new players coming in and out until they find the right cornerstone players that's going to be there for years to come. Now is the opportunity for you to establish yourself as one of those cornerstone players or that player that you can say, hey, you know, he really represents what we are as a franchise as far as hard work and what we do in the community. So now is the opportunity because they know that players are going to be coming in and year out, having that opportunity also. This is everything for OKC. You know, until they find those cornerstone guys, they're going to just keep rolling the dice, and they have plenty of opportunities to do that.
So many opportunities. I want to move over to the Knicks. They cleared up $35 million in cap space, and we know they have been hunting for stars in recent years. Brian, so many times they have created cap space that has not led to anything, but it sure felt like this week that these were some smarter moves. They made a good draft pick, and I don't know, I look at that $35 million and Gordon Hayward just opted out for $34 million. Is the Knicks creating this room something, nothing, or everything?
Yeah, I think it's something for sure. I mean, look, the Knicks realize that salary cap space is in high demand right now. There's not going to be much of it, especially after the Hawks make a move or two. And I think if you look at what they've done the last couple days, making a bunch of trades on draft night to move around to get their picks, and then making a move yesterday to take on a player, Ed Davis, where they picked up a couple of more draft picks. It looks like they're trying to be strategic. Now, that doesn't mean that if a star all of a sudden doesn't become available, they're not going to grab them. But I think they're going to try to be strategic because, quite frankly, next year's draft and next year's free agent class are better than this year's. So going swinging big right now may not be the smart move. And by the way, there's a whole bunch of teams competing in the East. It may not be the worst year to not try to fight for the 8th seed. I know that's not what Knicks fans maybe want to hear, but I do think it's the prudent way of going about it. And so far, Leon Rose and his front office looks like they're following that path.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think the Ed Davis salary dump to get those seconds was a great move. Remember, the Knicks missed a chance to do that with Andre Iguodala last year when the Warriors needed to dump him. Memphis got a first-round pick. Detroit just got a first-round pick for taking on Trevor Ariza. I think the Knicks should look at moves like that, stockpile the draft picks. That said, the one exception that I wonder if they're thinking about is not Gordon Hayward. I'm sure they're thinking about Gordon Hayward, but I kind of like the fit of Fred VanVleet for them instead. I know Woj reported earlier he's most likely to go back to Toronto. I've been reporting that the whole time. I think that's true. I just think the Knicks, they're young players. Their growth is going to be stunted until the Knicks get a real point guard. And Frank Ntilikina has made some progress, but I think he's more a Patrick Beverley kind of point guard, like an off-ball spot-up guy than the engine of an offense. And I just think Kevin Knox, R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson would benefit so much from them getting a veteran, leader, selfless kind of guy. So if I were them, I would look at Fred VanVleet, but I don't know what they're going to do. They do seem to be acting prudently, which I like.
Well, look, we've all heard the Gordon Hayward supposition, right? I think there's a couple other teams that are not being mentioned for Gordon Hayward just because they don't have salary cap space. But remember, there's other ways for him to go places. Like if he wanted to go to an Indiana, They could do a sign-in trade. That's something that's floating out there right now. But I think with the Knicks, all that salary cap space, you could throw an offer at KCP. You could throw an offer at Bogdanovich. You could throw an offer at Van Vliet. You can just make teams that are trying to retain their own free agents uncomfortable. And maybe you might get one of these guys, or maybe you become the third team in a sign-in trade that picks up a draft pick because you're able to absorb some of that salary.
Yeah, Paul, this idea of, hey, taking a reasoned, measured approach, not trying to force your way into the East in a year where all these teams really have so much skin in the game. Do you recognize this Knicks team? How do you feel about this?
No,
Pretty
I don't
nice to see, right?
I mean, you know, they've done better with this draft, but the cap room, Knicks haven't